Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, following the 3H's of the channel. And in this video, it's all about things that happen in the absolute middle of nowhere. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me, and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. I live on a farm in Iceland. I've had a lot of interesting things happen here ever since I was a young kid, to the point that ghosts and the supernatural are fairly normal to me. A part of our land was part of an old graveyard, and before that, there were likely burial mounds there, as there were remnants of one found by accident during construction of one of our buildings. Anyway, here's something weird that happened here. I was just a kid. I was playing outside on the trampoline. In the distance, on top of this hilly part of our land, a part that my grandfather is adamant about it being a sacred elven home, I see a bull. We own no bulls, and the land is separated by a canal and a fence, so I'm quite surprised. The bull walks into the ground, and out of it rises a man. I stood in awe and terror. I ran to fetch my grandfather. When I returned, the spirit had disappeared, but my grandfather was very familiar with what we saw. That was my first experience. A few years back, I drove out to Arkansas with a friend for work. Our boss was this really cool old southern guy, and he told us that if we wanted to, we could drive up early and stay at his ranch. He said there was good fishing nearby. He had four-wheelers and lots of beer in the fridge. My friend and I, of course, take him up on this, and we spend the first day just riding four-wheelers around the property. Then, we got shit-faced late into the night. The next day, we woke up late and decided to go fishing. By the time we got ready and ate and grabbed our stuff and went to the lake, it was basically 6 p.m. already. We were both super hungover, but not drunk. Anyway, we're just out there fishing, and suddenly, just like out of a horror movie, everything goes dead quiet. I could see the water moving, but I couldn't hear it. I could see the wind in the trees, but I couldn't hear it either. I turned to my friend, and I could tell that it wasn't just me. It's like we were both afraid to speak because there wasn't any sound. Right at that moment, there was a huge gust that picked up. I could feel it on my skin, and it whipped through my clothes, and I couldn't hear anything, even though I could feel it. So we're both just staring at each other, a little spooked, when we hear this big splash that came from over to our right. We both jumped and looked over. It wasn't a Bigfoot. That's what people always think of when I describe it. This thing was tall and hairy, but it wasn't built. It was super slim, almost very lanky, but with broad shoulders, and it was only 20 feet away from us. It trudged really quickly through the water and up the bank and into the trees. Before we knew it, it was gone. It happened so fast that I didn't even really clue into what was happening until it was over. My friend said he noticed that it had really big hands, but honestly, all I noticed was how lanky it was and its height, and it moved supernaturally fast through the water and up the bank. So a few years ago, I went for a campervan trip with my family in the Scottish Highlands. It was a pretty crappy old van, but it was great fun being with the family again. We ended up in a farmer's field in the middle of pretty much nowhere, but he was a member of the Caravan club, so we didn't think it was that suspect. At some point in the late afternoon, it started just pouring rain. So Mom made a quick dinner, and we all went to bed just after a few games of cards. It was pretty comfy, actually. the rain pounding on the roof. There were sheep giving the occasional blart. I fell asleep very quickly. I woke up early. It was just me awake. I heard this strange hissing noise, and it sounded like something sniffing around or moving stuff. It sounds like something is rubbing against the van, too. I was beginning to get a little nervous, starting to freak out. I thought about waking up my dad, and just as I'm about to do so, I hear the farm's rooster let it rip. I nearly shit myself. It sounded like it was right outside the window. Everyone's now wide awake. We all have a bit of a laugh, and we joke about not needing alarms. I kind of forget about the weird noise and something around the van very quickly. We get dressed. It's a nice morning. We're going to go fishing in a nearby loch. Me and the old man head out to the farm to get some fresh eggs that we were promised. The farmer kind of chuckles and asks my dad if the van is okay. My old man looks confused, says, "It's fine, why?" The farmer then turns to a look of confusion and says, "I saw you out there giving it a real good check over when I woke up this morning." My old man says, "Well, I didn't wake up until that chicken screamed." I mentioned that I had heard something weird around the van before the chicken screamed. The old man and the farmer look at each other. They ask me to give them a minute. I go back to the van with the eggs. 5 minutes later, my old man is back and tells Mom to turn the cooker off. We're getting the hell out of here. It turns out the farmer had seen someone going around the van for 15 to 20 minutes. The person had no clothes on, which in the moment the farmer found a little funny. But then he realized that my dad isn't that pale. In fact, whoever or whatever was around our van was unearthly pale. But like I said, in the moment he wasn't the least bit suspicious because he knew that there was nobody, nothing, even remotely nearby. The nearest building was in fact 3 kilometers away and was basically abandoned. The farmer said he was calling the police and understood if we wanted to leave. This was in April. It's still really cold in the Highlands, so we have no idea who or what it was. For the rest of the trip, we stayed at busy sites. That moment freaked us all out. Luckily, nothing like that happened the rest of the trip. A few years ago, I went out night hunting with my 2 brothers. It's a really spur-of-the-moment thing, miles and miles from where we live. We get there just before 11:30 p.m. The second that we sit on the pier, there's an absolute downpour of heavy wind and rain. I tell my brothers that there's not much sense in fishing here if it's going to be like this. They call me a pussy and insist that we'll catch something. But by about 1:30 a.m., we haven't caught anything, not even a bite. The only thing we caught is probably a cold. So we start driving back. It's about 90 minutes to 2 hours to home. The road we're on is a highway, but there's nothing nearby, and it's really isolated. We turn on the radio to the usual station, and it's weird. It's not the usual station playing. It's an unbelievably niche genre of music that I only know because I listen to it, and I go to the one club in the country that plays it. I become aware of this absolutely blinding light that feels like it's been there for ages, but we only just noticed it. There's a huge truck behind us, like a big rig. It starts blaring its horn. We think, what the hell? There's 3 lanes and no one around. Go on one of those lanes if we're in the way. It freaks us out a bit, but then the big rig drops back quite a ways. But then we see it come absolutely barreling up the road behind us, flashing its lights, blaring the horn. We think, man, this is weird as hell. We don't want to do this. It's towing something too. There's no way that it's faster than a car, even with the three of us in it. My brother puts the pedal to the floor. The truck keeps up with seemingly no problem at all. I'm starting to get scared. It turns its lights off, but stays behind, talking like maybe a matter of feet away. It keeps doing this, dropping behind, then speeding up, lights on and off, the horn blaring for about 10 minutes in total. The radio starts getting all staticky, like it's searching for a signal. Suddenly, there's a weird fog. The radio station comes back on when we exit this fog. The truck is completely gone. It was like a cross between something from Roadkill or Joyride and Jeepers Creepers all into one. It was super bizarre, and none of us liked it one bit. Something weird happened while I was traveling through South Carolina. I'd never been here. I was just passing through. I was moving down a fairly isolated road because, to be honest, I got lost. But then, I spot something in my rearview mirror. These bright lights are just bouncing across the sky. I hit the brakes. I've never seen anything paranormal or otherwise related, and I'm thinking that this is my first UFO sighting. It turns out to be something weirder that I can't classify. I am pulled over, about to exit the car, but I don't. I begin to feel tense. I turn and just watch the lights for a bit through my window. For some reason, I'm very hesitant about getting out of the car. I'm watching the lights moving sporadically. Suddenly, they all sync up into a single straight line. In unison, they move around and then down behind some trees. The whole road was totally surrounded by them. I realize at that moment that something had been watching me. In the trees that the lights just disappeared behind, I see reflective eyes. They're all the way near the top of the trees. I think I'm seeing things, but then I make out a shape. It looks, honestly, the only way I can describe it is like a giant cousin It from the Addams Family. It's black and tall, and it's the size of the trees. Cousin It seems to back up in one fluid motion toward where the lights went down behind the trees. The trees are bending over and snapping in two as it goes. It quickly disappears back into the darkness. So I think that I have a Bigfoot story, but I don't know for sure. I didn't exactly stick around to see what it was. But anyway, I have just under a 50-acre hobby farm in the middle of nowhere in northern Wisconsin. It's about 1/4 of the property that is swamp or wooded. The wooded area is at the back of the property and goes back to a lake about half a mile through the woods. The sun is just about to go down, but still enough to see some light. I'm double checking, making sure the pastures are secure, the animals are all accounted for, etc. Everything seems to be normal. I start walking back to the house, and then I hear coyotes at the back of the property. My WTF meter ticks slightly. Usually, you only hear or see coyotes well after dark or right before dawn. I breed Great Pyrenees as livestock guardian dogs. Generally, I have about 8 at any given time. They live with the sheep. I whistle for the dogs, and I let them out of the gate. If you're familiar with this breed of dog, they're the sweetest dogs, but turn into ruthless killing machines when it comes to coyotes. The dogs hear the coyotes and take off toward the back of the property. I go in the garage and I grab my 22 because I keep one handy on top of some cabinets in the garage. A decent 22 LR is enough to take out a coyote, so I didn't really think of getting anything bigger from inside the house. The path back towards the woods has cornfields. Nowadays it's hay, but that year it was corn on both sides. It's a slow incline up to an apex halfway to the woods that is about 10 to 12 feet higher than up by my house in any buildings. I start walking down the path toward the woods. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose back by the woods. The dogs are going apeshit. I hear what I can only describe as almost a lion's roar, but not quite. I think, oh, what the hell's going on? I start running now to see what's going on. I reach the top of the hill. The dogs are all heading my way, running full speed, tails tucked. All sprint past me, back toward their pens and pastures. I look back toward the woods just in time to see a huge log come bursting through the tree line. I duck and move out of the way. I turn and run back toward the house at full speed, like Forrest Gump in the Vietnam scene. I quick run, and I open up the gate to let the dogs back in. I go inside the house. I don't want to scare the kids, so I try and act calm, but I tell my wife to go upstairs with them. She can tell that I'm shook. I grab my .375 Ruger and go up to the attic, where I have a line of sight to the top of the hill and over the cornfields. I watch out the window until I can't see anything anymore. I hear nothing else. I see nothing else. The next morning, all the dogs and the animals are fine. I let out 2 dogs that listen the best because I'm still a little on edge. I go to check out the logs with both dogs by my side. This log had to weigh at about 150 pounds. It was fully intact. Whatever threw this through the woods had to be strong AF. This was about 3 years ago. I haven't seen or heard anything weird at all since. I'm always respectful of the land, and I talk to nature while I'm out doing field work, so I'd like to think that any weird stuff out there knows that I'm a friend of nature. This isn't necessarily a long story, but it still scares the hell out of me. It's not the only weird thing I've seen in rural West Virginia, but it's the one that's closest to my home and hit closest to home because of it. So I was driving a few weeks ago, traveling home late at night, driving through the mountains. It was real windy, curvy, 2-lane roads. Just off the roads are thick brush or just total drop-offs. There's nobody out here. The nearest town is over an hour away. At this point, there's not even many houses. I pass by a clearing after a tight curve, so I'm only going to get like 15 miles an hour because I'm getting close to home. As I'm going, I see something in a field, the flash of eyes when first hit. Instinctively, I stop because I don't want to hit a deer. They're kind of unpredictable, so I want to see it and see what it does. I quickly realize that it's definitely not a deer. My bright headlights are on something now as I stop. The thing looked like it was eating on something on the ground before I brighted it. It had long legs, a medium torso, with the arms. The arms were as long as the thing itself. It looked pale, covered in white hair, with large eyes. The thing stands up fully, and it's way taller than I anticipated. Had to be at least 7 feet tall. I finally see the hands. It doesn't look like fingers, more like claws. The thing is only about 30 feet from the front of my car. Whatever it is starts moving toward my car, super quick. After a step or two, it drops to all fours. I hit the gas and I get the hell out of there. I spend the rest of the ride home with one hand on the wheel and the other holding my gun. The bad thing is, this was only 15 miles from my house, and it's not the only time that I've seen shit like this. Appalachia is cursed, I'm convinced. A few weeks after this, I'm in a similar situation. I was driving home. I had to take care of my parents' dog. I was close to that area, and I hit a pothole or something, and my truck decides that the rear tire is finally going to pop. I was still pretty spooked about the thing I saw a few weeks prior. I decide that it's only a few hours till daytime, and I'll just sit on the side of the road with the car running. Around the 2-hour mark, I absolutely have to pee, so I end up getting out and going to the back of the truck. I remember to grab my pistol because I don't want anything to happen to me. Just as I start doing my business, I hear definite tapping or knocking on the front hood, and then someone says something that sounds absolutely alien to me. I think, oh shit. I contemplate my impending doom as I'm just trying to stand there and use the bathroom. After a second, a person approaches, hugging the side of my truck practically. The dude is not normal. He looked much older than he should have for his eyes. His eyes, though, I specifically remember they were orange. At this point, I'm still standing there, zipping up my pants. The best thing I can say in the moment is, "What's up?" The dude doesn't talk. He just stares at me and smiles. Those eyes felt like they were penetrating my soul. I say something along the lines of, "Always the worst time to have a flat," or something. The dude just nods. A second later, after a second or two of staring at me, he finally says something. "Are you scared of the woods?" he said, as his smile went away. I say, no. The dude tries telling me that there's something that he wants to show me in the woods. I politely decline. Eventually, he keeps asking, more intently than the last, before reaching the point of aggressiveness. At this point, he lunged toward me, and that's where I drew the line. I pointed my pistol at him, and I mag-dumped. The dude falls back into the ditch, but he's still moving, scrambling. The bush is way too rough to actually see where he went. But then, I see him stand up. He looks at me like he's had his feelings hurt. There's bullet holes all through him, and he makes this weird dog-like whimpering as he scrambles up the bank and into the woods. I decide to just go home and forget this ever happened, hopefully. My wife is superstitious, and I couldn't tell her. A week or so later, she starts talking about a coyote that's hanging around the house. Eventually, I press her for details without being too obnoxious about it. She says it's usually wandering the mountainside near our house when she leaves in the morning for work, which is about 4:30 or 5 a.m., and in the evenings, when she comes home, it's still there. I start sitting outside on the back porch during those times with binoculars. Eventually, I start seeing it. This thing is huge for a coyote, especially for Appalachia. As I'm looking at it through the binoculars, it's looking directly at me. I swear it has the same orange eyes. The thing is only about 50 to 60 yards from the house. So in the last week or so, I've been seeing him more often. Our animals refuse to go outside when this coyote is around. My wife, oddly enough, loves standing outside to watch it. She seems to notice it a lot quicker when it's around, and it's odd considering how she usually isn't very observant. A few days ago, I took my rifle, a 300 Winchester, and I sat outside waiting for it when the wife wasn't home. Eventually, I see it, standing broadside to me while still looking at me. The thing is only 40 yards away, and I know I hit it because I saw the impact on the body and I saw the blood, but the thing just ate a body shot from a 300 Winchester and kept standing, just walking away into the woods. 2 days ago, our cat escaped, which is odd because he never wants outside. Yesterday, our cat was in our back porch, mangled but still barely alive. Just alive enough that my wife saw him before work and called in sick. The cat obviously didn't make it. Half its organs were outside of its stomach. Our dogs are absolutely refusing to go outside anymore at night. Now keep in mind, I'm still seeing this thing, so if y'all get any advice, tell me. The wife is currently spending nights at her parents' with the dogs. I'm not sure what to do anymore, besides just get out of the area and sell the house. So, let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email down below in the description that you can send them to if you'd like to. Also down there as well is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way. And of course, on YouTube there's super thanks as well. And just watching the video, liking and subscribing is great too, which remember to do that as well, like and subscribe. And I'll put a couple videos up here that you can check out if you're new to the channel, or just want something else to watch. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.